I just want to know you, God, whether it's good, whether it's bad. Ultimately, I want you to have all of my life. That is the soft spot. There's one final one that I think is absolutely huge. I call it the soft spot. Now, the soft spot is a place where there is vulnerability as well, but it's where we are most vulnerable to God. The soft spot is the spot that is surrendered to Jesus. It is that spot that God is able to use to change and minister and mold our life. The soft spot is the place where we know God at our deepest levels. You can see Paul in his soft spot in Philippians chapter 3, verse 10. And when in Philippians chapter 3, verse 10, is a time where Paul stops. He's kind of writing to the Philippian church, and he says, God, I want to know you in the power of your resurrection and to know you in the fellowship of your sufferings, becoming like you unto even your death. I just want to know you, God, whether it's good, whether it's bad. Ultimately, I want you to have all of my life. That is the soft spot that God is desiring. It's the one that David talks about in Psalm chapter 51. In Psalm chapter 51, verse 6, where it says, you desire truth in the inmost parts, and in the hidden part you have made me to know wisdom. And then he goes on in verse 10, he says, create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right, steadfast spirit within me. Even in verse 17 of that same chapter, it's such a wonderful, such a powerful passage of scripture. Psalm 51. Verse 17, he says, the sacrifices to God are a broken spirit, a broken and a contrite heart. These, O God, you will not despise. You see, David did have a weak spot. But the thing is, the soft spot that he had for God was so overwhelming that it was able to heal and minister to the weak spot. And so we have to ask ourselves, what are the things? See, the soft spot is that part where you become so honest before God and where you express such a humility. And I'm not talking about a humility that just kind of says, well, I just want to be quiet and I want to be reverent before the Lord. No, the humility that I'm talking about is a humility that only comes through brokenness. That part where God actually has our heart at a point where we say, God, I can't do nothing without you. And then the third H to there, the three H's, honesty, humility, and hearing. To continually be seeking to have communion with God where God can speak to our hearts and soften our hearts. And so that part becomes bigger and bigger and is able to minister to the weak spots, is able to expose the blind spots, is be able to harness the sweet spots in our lives. And that's when God really begins to move. I don't know where you stand. I may not even know who you are. You might be watching for some reason by accident. But let me ask you, how are that spots in your lives? Are you being killed by a weak spot? Have you just been decimated by a blind spot? Do you have a strong spot or a sweet spot and you just haven't used it? You just kind of sat on it. You just kind of hit it. Or maybe you're just listening and saying, God, I just want so much. I want so much for that soft spot that I have for God to grow and grow and grow so that I can handle all the things that are going on in my life, because there's so much taking place. There's so much pressure. There are so many times where I'm just kind of falling apart and I'm not even too sure what to do. Well, it's that point where if you're at that point where you're just saying, I don't know what to do. My life is a mess. I'm not too sure what's going on. You're in the exact place where God is able to minister and work and move in your life. Pursue the soft spot. Surrender the weak spot. Ask God to expose the blind spot. Continue to allow God to move in the sweet spot.